especially small business. I'm glad the Minister is in his seat, because yesterday he was challenged to name a small business that supported this bill. 24 hours later, he still cannot. And that is not down to the assiduity of the Minister, who I'm sure is very assiduous, but the simple fact that no small business supports this bill. Yesterday, I've hardly started. There can't be possibly anything he wants to intervene on me just yet, but I will come to him in a minute. Yesterday, we discovered, I will come to him in a minute. Yesterday, we heard that Labour clearly doesn't understand business. And today, we get to what they really do understand, which is how they can support their trade union paymasters. And members opposite have given an absolute masterclass in telling us about how to support trade unions. Honourable members on this side have mentioned the 1970s. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, when I heard some honourable members speaking on the other side, especially the member for Blythe and Ashington, the score of John Williams soared in my mind from Jurassic Park. But instead of Jeff Goldblum being savaged by the dinosaurs that walk amongst us today will be savaging our economy. And we know that because the growing influence of the unions, especially within this bill, impose a heavy burden on corporations, stifling their ability to operate efficiently. And as new businesses struggle to adapt to these new regulations, predicted in the government's very own impact assessment, which is going to cost £5 billion, industry leaders have publicly shared their fears over...
Point of order, Andy MacDonald.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we've had directions from the Chair, and I'd ask for your guidance on this. We've just had the Speaker be immensely critical of an honourable member whose history is standing up to defend his industry and had the courage to go out and strike for 12 months, and he has not, to my knowledge. I'd like to ask the question, has he been given notice that he would be named in this debate in that way?
I thank the honourable member for his point of order. He will be aware that that was not a point of order. And as the honourable member for Blythe Valley had spoken in this debate, it's perfectly in order to refer to the comments that he had made. Gregory Stafford.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I return to what industry leaders are saying. They've shared, and I quote, their fear over union influence slowing down decision-making and hindering flexibility, making it harder for companies to remain competitive in global markets. Indeed, the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development survey found that 79% of organisations expect measures planned as part of the Employment Rights Bill to increase employment costs, placing further strain on companies having to grapple with the increases in national insurance contributions, the rising national minimum wage, while it being likely, while it being likely that these will continue to lead, and I quote, to more strikes, more disruptions and ultimately less productivity. I give way to the honourable member.
The honourable member has referred a number of times to the proceedings yesterday, and one of the things I'm saddest about is that the honourable member for Farnham and Borden was not able to join us in the division lobbies voting against the amendments and in favour of the bill yesterday, given that 73% of his constituents in Farnham and Borden support statutory sick pay for all workers from day one, and 67% of his constituents support banning 0 hours contracts.
Well, I'm sorry that I'm such a disappointment to the honourable lady, but maybe she will get over it. This is a rollback of the most important changes that we made when we were in government. And it's no surprise, therefore, that the trade unions have warmly embraced this legislation, with over 200 amendments hastily shoehorned to satisfy those who line the government's pockets. Perhaps it's purely coincidental that their wishes have been granted, though one might wonder if the £5.6 million in donations the Labour Party has received since July had something to do with it. Very happy to.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend giving way. The last Labour member to speak also, despite her proud membership of trade unions, didn't mention the more than £9,000, I think, that she received just in the last year, any more than her predecessor mentioned the £24,000 plus that he received. If Labour were truly proud of the way they've been bought and paid for by the trade unions, perhaps they could be open about how much they've received.
Stafford.
Well, my honourable friend makes an absolutely key point. And what's been interesting, I think, the change from yesterday to today, where yesterday actually, whilst they were very clear to declare that they were members of trade unions, only today have they suddenly realised that they should be declaring the amount of money that they are receiving directly. And we heard yesterday from the Shadow Secretary of State for Levelling Up that this legislation will allow unions to bypass current rules, such as opting out of political donations. It must be absolutely fantastic news to the party opposite that Labour will now receive default donations from workers, while businesses will face reduced notice periods for strikes, leading to even more disruption and economic damage. It's clear to me, and the hundreds of businesses that pulled their support for this government, this isn't about protecting employment rights, it's about consolidating union power. Let's look at some of those amendments briefly, Madam Deputy Speaker. Amendment 292 will require trade unions to notify their members every year of their right to opt out of the political fund and to obtain an annual opt-in. This change ensures that the unions continue to fill Labour's piggy bank, locking workers into automatic donations unless they actively opt out, which is as much a memory test as an admin task. This is not about transparency, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's about keeping money flowing to the political party with the most to gain. Likewise, the clauses and amendments which would have introduced transparency around the facilities provided to trade union officials, learning representatives and equality representatives. These amendments are designed to reduce transparency and accountability for union spending, allowing union officials to continue to benefit from facilities time without proper scrutiny. I will, the last time, yes.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Does my honourable friend think there's quite an interesting contrast in terms of the government's approach? It's quite happy to put extra burdens, responsibilities and work on small businesses and businesses of all sizes. Yet when it comes to any element of transparency or any element of giving members of trade unions a real choice and understanding of where their money's going, they refuse to do that.
Gregory Stafford.
The disparity, I put it no stronger than that my right honourable friend mentions is stark. And I think anybody watching the proceedings outside this House will absolutely agree with him that, on the one hand, they want to put extra burdens, extra regulations on business, but when it comes to the trade unions, transparency goes out of the window. And why, as my honourable friend said, why is this happening? The answer is simple and clear. Unions have significant influence over this government. And while the Deputy Prime Minister and her Cabinet colleagues are pushing for the changes, they don't even follow them themselves. Clear key figures, including the Chancellor, the Foreign Secretary and the Home Secretary, are all guilty of hiring under terms that are at odds with these new regulations. Why would they introduce such a bill when they themselves don't comply with it? And it's just like the more than 200 Labour MPs who've taken union donations, the Deputy Prime Minister has her own interests to consider. Yesterday, in her opening remarks, she proudly disclosed her union membership while conveniently admitting the £13,000 in union donations that she has taken. To me, it is clear that union influence is driving this legislation and most likely writing the speeches of the party opposite. For a government who claims to be pro-growth, pro-business and pro-worker, and that's a quote, perhaps it's time they start... I won't, because I've only got a minute to go. It's time they started listening to the real industry experts, those with practical experience within the sector, not just the trade unions or the confines of Whitehall. That is why the Conservatives have tabled the key amendments to support growth, New Clause 89 and New Clause 90, international competitive duty in New Clause 87, and a limit on trade union influence on our business-driven economy. Madam Deputy Speaker, we need to ensure that the government's policies do not burden our businesses, do not stifle innovation, or lead to long-term economic harm. This bill isn't just poorly thought out, it's a direct threat to the very fabric of our economy, and we must challenge it before it causes irreparable damage and crushes our already crippled economy. Yeah.